This video, it is a personal introduction to non-duality. I say personal because you can find on Google a lot of information and there's a lot of videos probably introducing non-duality. But for the people who have probably heard that word a lot and not knowing what it's referring to, or you may have been exposed to a bit of radical statements you hear in non-duality, like there is no self, there is no distance between you and anything, there's no time, there's no space, our personal experience is an illusion, there's no doership, there is nothing who controls, you don't control your life in the way you think, and so on. And all these statements are not just a philosophy. And most importantly, this I'm going to tell you probably the best tip you will ever hear about non-duality. As much as it seems that it's a philosophy and you're trying to make a philosophical point, there's reasoning and there is some sort of intellectual use, it is actually for you not to understand. So don't worry. If you find the riddles of the non-dual teachers a bit complicated and you may have read books about it even, but you still don't experience firsthand or completely really, your mind doesn't completely really understand what it means, don't worry, because your mind will never understand what it means. They are the words that a non-dual teacher says are not just to make a point of the truth, like saying this is the ultimate truth. There is no self, there is no world, everything is an illusion, there is no time, there's only this presence of this moment. All these things you hear are not truths. What they are is they are canceling a programming we have in our minds. So it's okay if you don't understand it, because you're not supposed to understand it. The only thing all these pointers and apparently complex intellectual maneuvers, they're only seducing you to look for the direct experience beyond your mind. So they are just sort of distracting your mind for something else to happen. That something else is just the most natural realization of your presence, of you, of what you really are beyond your mental activity. So you could say that some ways a philosophy to stop thinking, to calm your mind. So if for whatever reason you find some statements very complex or too abstract to understand, or they just plain don't make any sense, or they sometimes break the meaning of language, you're right. And don't try to understand it. Don't feel intimidated just because people say things that you honestly don't experience in your life and you don't know what they're referring when they're saying, for example, like, you are not a body or a mind. That sounds a strange statement to say. And it looks like the person who's talking, it is referring to some sort of other dimension that you don't have access to in your direct experience. No, they're never referring to that. It's just a thought exercise to let your mind consume itself. So don't worry about understanding everything about non-duality. It is just an invitation to relax. It's an active invitation. A more direct invitation, it is what probably the most influential non-dual teacher ever, which is Ramana Maharshi, he explained that the highest teaching is silence. It is direct experience. But for most of us, our mind can't stop thinking. So then it comes tools and explanations. And that's this whole philosophy of non-duality with this. You don't need to understand it. You don't need to read all the books until you just get it. You will never get it in the sense of intellectual understanding. You may be able to repeat all the words, but here's the part where you have to be very honest with yourself to know if you're actually experiencing your life with ease, spontaneity, with peace, with unconditional love. If that's the case, you are understanding non-duality. So it's not like a special experience you have to look for. No, it's actually the direct experience of the reality of you being you. So you are already in a deeper layer. You are a master of non-duality. So you're not really learning non-duality from anything. Sometimes some things that some other people will point to with words may help you realize a gap in your mind, may expose your mind. In that sense, that teaching is useful. Follow that teaching. You will just see it just calms your mind. A teacher may say something that suddenly makes sense and invites you to see your experience from a, let's call it, broader perspective, or a bit more sensitive and direct perspective. You will notice that your mind, a percentage of your mind at least, will just drop in activity, because you're just resting. You're not stopping your mind. It's just, your mind just becomes not a tool to experience non-duality. Your mind cannot experience it, so don't use it. Don't use it to understand non-duality. So sometimes a teacher will say something and it will totally get you and it will take you there. It's like someone giving you a hand, but still you have to do it on your own. You have to rest in that understanding on your own. So sometimes what some teachers will say will actually lead you there, but sometimes you're going to find a lot of complex, strange things that you may not fully understand. That is okay. You're not supposed to understand non-duality in the intellectual sense, in the regular sense of what we use the word understanding. It's an experience. That experience comes for all the non-dual teachers you're going to find out there. It came after a very profound process. So don't try to get it. It's more like just surrender to it. Just let your mind cancel itself with these nonsense radical statements that apparently don't make any sense. The only point for them is to silence your mind. That's all. So if you can rest and silence your mind directly, like, for example, they would do in Zen, which is also a non-dual path. If you just rest in silence, you can calm your mind, calm yourself, your emotions that are worrying you and making you live an experience of suffering, anxiety, or just not happy, just not at peace. If you can just surrender it, you can. You just need to let go. But in the process, most people will find, okay, sometimes it works, sometimes I can just surrender, but many times it's just not going to work, because there is some conditioning in deeper layers of your mind that is active that prevents you from letting go. That's where most non-dual teachings, the classical non-dual teachings, implied a lot of meditation and study. This is not just something you just understand from a YouTube video. They were assuming you will give an enormous amount of your time and mental curiosity into the topic just to have a chance. In the modern path, most teachers say there is no need to meditate and there is no need. Well, I have to say, just make sure that the person that is saying that is actually the way they got there. Because many teachers and beloved teachers, I will say probably one of the most famous one and beloved, and I love this guy, is Rupert Spira. I never know what's the right way to pronounce his name. Some of the time they make the point, which is true, that you don't have to do anything. But when you check their background, you see that they actually did practice meditation for a long time. And I just want to say that actually was an important catalyzer, was really allowing him at some point to have the sensitivity to get it. So I think it's a bit unfair when the non-dual teachers say that there is nothing to do. You don't even need to try to do anything about it. The more you try, the worse it is. Well, that's actually not the case. And if you look through history, you will see that the traditions who have been teaching this successfully for hundreds, not even thousands of years, actually, they had it figured out. And they will suggest you do whatever you have to do to calm yourself. Externally, it will be to maybe take a shower and get a good rest, good food, treat your body well, and just not have big problems in your life, let's say. But then you have to calm your mind. You can do that by meditation, or if you have the chance to really feel connected to everything every day, in the morning and during your day, you are connected to everything and you are present, fully present, then good for you. You certainly don't need a teacher. But I don't know even one single case of any authentic teacher who didn't get to that point of not doing without doing a lot, even when that doing a lot may have been suffering, like in the case of Eckhart Tolle or Byron Katie. They suffer a lot to understand. That's a short but very horrible way of doing it, I would say. But if you're just a regular person, then I would suggest you to do things that help you do less. And just follow that. Follow your instinct. And little by little, out of your experience, you will understand non-duality. Suddenly the teachings, you will say, yeah, that's obvious. But you didn't get there by logic. You didn't get by thinking about it. All the teachings are just giving you faith to try to surrender and to trust in your experience as it is without judging, without changing anything, just resting. So do what you have to do. You're your teacher. You know what works, independently if teachers may think it's incorrect or correct. Just try it. If you think it's working, then do it. And if you're wrong, then you will find out and you will learn the lesson. But many times you're actually right. And it's just some teaching saying you don't have to do anything that is just confusing. And I think it's some way stopping the potential for many people to realize non-duality when some statements non-dual teacher says. Okay, now to make this longer, I hope it was meaningful to you. And of course, I strongly suggest you to follow meditation. Because if you cannot calm your mind to a superficial degree of just focusing on your breath, then you're not going to be able to calm it enough to understand and experience non-duality. Just not going to happen. So give it just a chance to test, find your formula, be honest, and never stop aiming for the highest state of purity and happiness because you deserve it. You don't need to suffer. You can rest at any moment like this one and let everything be as it is. That's meditation. Just relax. Give yourself permission to enjoy being alive. Just rest.